China's most popular lake, West Lake in Hangzhou, has attracted writers and artists for thousands of years. There are countless poems about it. One of the most striking is Lin Shan's written on an inn wall. Mansions rise above mansions, green hills beyond green hills. When will the revelry on Westlake be still? Idlers, fuddled by the fumes on the warm breeze, take Hangzhou for lost Bianzhou, as if all is well. This poem reflects the complacent mentality of the rulers of southern Song. Southern Song had a highly developed economy, advanced science and technology, and a prosperous foreign trade. It was open to the outside world, but diplomatically and militarily it fell short. In the face of the perennial problem of foreign invasion, the southern Song court was too often passive. In the end, it was doomed to collapse. But the epic struggle of the southern Song army and people made military history. In 1141, after the Song and Qing dynasties signed the Treaty of Shaoxing, the powerful Chancellor Qin Hui began taking over everything, from ministers' terms in office to the appointment and dismissal of local prefects. First, he forced Zhang Jun to resign. With no further political opponents in the court, he then promoted his own lackeys. Even so, Qin Hui often dismissed ministers within months of their appointment to prevent any threat to his own power. He also appointed cronies to control imperial petitions to prevent certain ministers from advising the emperor. Once he had gained control over both the court and public opinion, Qin Hui threw himself into corrupt dealings, brazenly opening the door to bribery. With corrupt officials and a suffering population, the coffers of southern Song were empty, finances were tight. Yet through various means, Qin Hui and his family amassed wealth several times greater than that of the main state treasury. Qin Hui's adopted son, Qin Shi, and his grandchildren were all high-ranking officials. Their power was even greater than Cai Jing's had been as Chancellor of the Northern Song dynasty. The writer and statesman Zhu Xi once said, "Emperor Gaozong is powerless to act, since the court is full of allies of Qin Hui."
据南宋人记载，宋高宗向金人起和时金人提出一个极其霸道无理的要求，不许以无罪取首相。秦桧是宋金一和的象征，若罢免他，就意味着宋方释回了和议，这是宋高宗万万不敢也万万不愿的。
Bolstered by his support from Jin, Qin Hui dominated the imperial court for more than 10 years. He was so hated, it is said that when he died in 1155, all men started to drink wine and put their hands on their foreheads to express joy and felicity. But Emperor Gaozong was worried. Now that Jin's proxy in southern Song was dead, could peace be maintained? To affirm southern Song's commitment to peace, Emperor Gaozong decided to appoint as counselors Qin Hui's henchmen, Shen Gai, Wan Shexie, and Tang Setui. Qin Hui's death should have been a blessing for the southern Song dynasty, but as the official Liu Zhong said in the Chronicle of Major Events, One Hui is dead, but hundreds still remain. The corrupt and floundering bureaucracy remained unchanged. Although the emperor continued to pursue peace, he knew in his heart that war between Song and Jin was only a matter of time. Having no children, his first priority was to designate a crown prince.
到了22岁的时候啊，这个赵构他的心理疾病，这种生理上的缺陷呢，就被朝臣知道了。那么当时有一位上虞县的县丞啊，那么冒着生命的危险，就亲自给宋高宗写了一封信，希望他呀能够从宋太祖这个一系当中呢，挑选一位，作为皇位的继承人。
于是就决定从太祖的一系宗室中挑选比宋高宗第一辈的孩子，收养在宫中。一个叫赵伯崇，一个叫赵伯久，后来分别改名为赵苑、赵据。
But the emperor was unable to choose between his adopted sons. Finally, he resorted to setting a honey trap for them by giving them both 10 virgin maids of honor. Zhao Yuan's teacher, Shi Hao, warned his pupil to be prudent. A few days later, Emperor Gao Chong had the 20 maids of honor physically examined, and Zhao Yuan's maids all proved to be intact virgins. And so Zhao Yuan became the chosen heir. In 1160, Emperor Gao Chong issued a formal decree naming Zhao Yuan as crown prince and changing his name to Wei. Zhao Wei was then 34.
宋高宗30多年没有确认两个人的皇子身份，为什么偏偏选在了这个时候？
首先啊，他盼望亲子的这个幻想已经破灭了。其次呢，秦桧和从金国归来的母后啊，都相继的死了。
还有一个非常重要的背景，那就是金国的皇帝完颜亮即将燃起亲宋的战火。
In 1149, Wan Yanliang, also known by his Jurchen name, Dikunai, staged a coup and made himself emperor of the Qing Dynasty. Deeply influenced by Han culture and thought, he believed that his dynasty could only be legitimate if it unified China. He felt the time was ripe for an invasion of the south. In September 1161, Wan Yanliang sent his troops south. After 3 months, the Song army collapsed without fighting a battle. After meeting so little resistance from the Song army, Wan Yanliang hardly expected anyone else to step forward to challenge his southern invasion. But someone did. Yu Yunwen, an official of southern Song. On the 6th of November, Yu Yunwen was at Saishe to present awards to Song soldiers. He was not expecting to be a man of destiny. But he saw that the Jin army was about to cross the river and took command of the river's defense. The situation was critical. He had only 18,000 troops. How could they stand up to the 170,000 Jin troops across the river? Yu Yunwen at once worked out a battle plan and organized his forces. The Jin army had a weakness he intended to exploit. They were not accustomed to fighting on water. Their ships were second-rate. So Yu Yunwen used the well-equipped and experienced Song fleet to destroy the Jin transports and prevent the Jin troops from landing. The Jin were put to flight. Wan Yanliang was enraged to be defeated by a scholar. Then he heard that in his absence, Wan Yanliang had made himself Emperor of Jin. Wan Yanliang now made an astonishing decision. He ordered the Jin army to cross the river in 3 days, or they would all be put to death. On the 27th of November, that decision cost him his life when he was assassinated by his own officers. The Jin army then withdrew to the north. In Beijing, there is still a site with relics from the former Jin capital, Zhongdu. It was here in December 1161 that Emperor Shizong of Jin ascended the throne. The first thing he did was end all military action and proposed peace with the Southern Sung dynasty. The initiative now lay in the hands of Southern Sung. But the confrontation with Jin had left the Sung ruler, Emperor Gaozong, physically and mentally exhausted. Unable to address the situation, he decided to retire. The following year, he abdicated in favor of his chosen successor. And so, Zhao Wei became Emperor Shaozong of Southern Sung. As soon as he ascended the throne, the young emperor posthumously cleared the names of Yue Fei and various others who had been framed by Qin Hui. His purpose was very clear. He was no longer content with a diminishing empire. But for decades, the imperial court had been dominated by a peace faction. With the military weary and the state growing weaker by the day, Emperor Shaozong recognized that internal stability had to come first. So he began a series of reforms. With the abuses of Qin Hui fresh in his mind, he chose his ministers carefully, with a view to keep factions from forming. He decided to issue more currency and sell government land. He reorganized the military and re-employed warlike ministers. With his internal reforms in place, Shaozong could look to expanding his empire. In order to avoid any opposition, he bypassed the 3 departments and the Bureau of Military Affairs. In April 1163, he directly ordered Zhang Jun and the generals to begin a campaign in the north. Zhang Jun could deploy 80,000 troops, though he put it about that he had 200,000. One force, led by Li Shenzhong, set out for Lingbi, while another, led by Shao Hongyuan, went to attack Hongxie along the front. In the Battle of Fuli, the Sung army was crushed. Emperor Shaozong's resolve wavered. The retired Emperor Gaozong began to pressure him to use Teng Se, an associate of Qin Hui, to make peace with the Jin. At the end of 1164, the Song and the Jin once again signed a peace agreement, the Treaty of Longxing. The sides agreed that the Southern Song Emperor would no longer be seen as among the Jin ruler's ministers. Rather, he would be like a nephew. Their border would run once more from the Huai River to the Dasan Pass, as it had done before Wan Yanliang's invasion. Song's annual tribute to Jin would be renamed an annual indemnity and be reduced from 250,000 taels of silver and as many bolts of silk to 200,000 of each. Emperor Shaozong had had the dream, and the state had had the power, but his ministers had failed him. The emperor began to waver between war and peace. The opportunity for recovery had been squandered. But more than 40 years later, there was another campaign in the north. Beigu Mountain is not one of Xinjiang's most notable historical or cultural sites, but more than 800 years ago, Xin Qiji wrote a stirring poem of lost heroism. Almost every Chinese tourist here can recite the ancient work. In this ancient land, what trace remains of Wu's brave king, Sun Quan? Towers and pavilions where girls danced and sang. Your glory is swept away by wind and rain. The slanting sunlight falls on grass and trees, small lanes, the quarters of the humble folk. Yet here, they say, Liu Yu lived. I think of the days when, with gilded spear and armoured steed, he charged like a tiger to swallow up vast lands. But the men of Song were routed from the north. Now 43 years have passed, and looking north, I remember the beacon fires that blazed to young Zhou. Bitter memories these. Who will ask old Lian Po if he still enjoys his food? Xin Qiji was 66 at the time. He had been recalled to service the previous year and appointed governor of Zhenjiang, in charge of defending Jingkou. While this aligned with his own ambitions, he was worried that the Chancellor Heng Tuozhou was actively planning a new campaign in the north. Xin Qiji believed that the southern Song army was too weak for such a campaign, but Heng Tuozhou insisted that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
此时啊，北方已不再是经过称霸的局面了。铁木真在这一年统一了蒙古各部，这对金国来说是一个不能小觑的力量。而南宋此时出兵，不但可以得到精兵不足的实惠，也可以享有独立的富国的名声。
In 1206, Han Tuozhou hastily launched a war against the Jin. It is known as the Northern Expedition of Kaiqi. Just as Xin Qiji feared, the Song army was soon defeated. In November the following year, Han Tuozhou was killed by Shi Meiyuan, a Song official who advocated peace, and his head was presented to the Jin court. Under the auspices of Shi Meiyuan, the southern Song government signed the peace treaty of Jiading, which increased the annual indemnity to Jin to 300,000 taels of silver and silk, plus 3 million in cash for the Jin army. Just as Qin Hui had done, Shi Meiyuan only appointed people he could easily control. He suppressed differing opinions in the imperial court and made criticism taboo. All his appointments were either friends or family. This led to ridicule, with people saying all the court officials come from Yin Xian, just like Shi Meiyuan. Shi Meiyuan established a dictatorship in which bribery and corruption were rife. Political corruption led to corruption of the legal system. Prisons proliferated and were the most brutal in the world. Local officials often took bribes in return for handing down lenient punishments. It was common for them to buy prison facilities where inmates were mistreated. The social divide grew wider and wider. In 1233, Shi Meiyuan died, and Emperor Li Zong attempted to take the reins of government. But the southern Song dynasty had accumulated a host of problems. In an attempt to turn the situation around, Emperor Li Zong implemented reforms. He abolished the system of direct appointments, reduced the number of officials, and strictly regulated the system of promotion. but the measures met with passive resistance and were implemented half-heartedly. Internally, the reforms failed. Externally, the fall of Jin to the Mongols was ushering in the doom of southern Song.
金国灭亡以后，蒙古国下一个目标必定是南宋。南宋政府并非不知道成王齿寒的道理，最后走上了联盟灭金的道路，更多的是一种两害相交取其轻的无奈。
In 1206, after Temujin had unified the Mongol tribes, a conference was held at the head of the Onon River. There he ascended the throne as Genghis Khan, leader of the Empire of Great Mongolia. In 1211, Genghis Khan rallied his horsemen to attack the Qing Dynasty. By the end of 1213, the Mongols had swept through almost all the Qing territories north of the Yellow River. They then headed west, leaving the Qing Dynasty to cling on temporarily south of the Yellow River. From 1217, the Qing dynasty launched several fresh invasions of the south, but the Song army's resistance shattered the Qing hopes time and again. The conflict lasted until 1223, with the Qing Empire expending vast amounts of military and material resources, all in vain. In July 1227, Genghis Khan died, but he left a final command to attack Qin through southern Song. That is, to pass through Song territory to outflank and destroy Qin. Over the next 5 years, Urgadai Khan sent several envoys to the southern Song court, proposing a joint invasion of Qin. But southern Song remained undecided. In 1232, the Mongols killed 200,000 Qin cavalrymen and 150,000 infantry at Sangfeng Mountain in Junzhou. It was a decisive victory. The Qin dynasty lost all of its best soldiers and generals. At this point, the southern Song leadership finally realized that the demise of the Qin dynasty was imminent. They sent an envoy to the Mongols, promising to send troops to destroy Qin jointly. In 1234, the 120-year-old Qin dynasty perished.
南宋举国上下为报了百年之仇，写了靖康之耻而欢欣鼓舞。而此时的南宋所面临的局势，几乎和金灭辽以后北宋所面临的局势一样。蒙古下一个目标肯定是南宋。
In 1235, 2 years after the fall of the Qin dynasty, the Mongols invaded the south from 3 directions. It signaled the start of the Song-Mongol Wars, which would last for more than 40 years. In their first onslaught, the Mongols occupied Xiangyang, a strategically important town in northern Hubei, connecting the western Dasan Pass with the eastern Huai River. It also served as a defensive barrier to Jiangning in the middle reaches of the Yangtze River. If Xiangyang were lost, Jiangling would also be in danger, and southern Song could no longer rely on the Yangtze as a natural defense line. In September of 1238, the southern Song court appointed General Meng Gong and ordered him to recapture Xiangyang. Meng Gong fought steadily, recovering Yingzhou, Jingmen, and other towns in quick succession. The following June, he recovered Xiangyang. The Mongols' invasion did not go as smoothly as they had expected. In November 1241, Ergadai Khan died. This sowed dissension among the Mongols and slowed their southern offensive.
蒙古内乱，这对于南宋来说是一个不可多得的机会。孟拱、于阶等南宋将领抓住这个机会，加强了景相和四川地区的防御力量。但是他们的进取与努力，却受到了南宋朝廷的种种的牵制，壮志难酬，悲愤成疾，两个人先后约一而终。
In 1251, Mengke was enthroned as the Mongol Khan, ending a decade-long internal power struggle and triggering another wave of attacks on southern Song. The city of Wuhan, then known as Ezhou, is in the center of China's hinterland. It is where the Yangtze and Han rivers meet, connecting the east to the west and the south to the north. It has always been known as the thoroughfare of 9 provinces. In 1259, an event occurred in Ezhou that would change the course of world history. Ezhou. This terrified the southern Song rulers and people. Losing Ezhou would mean losing their last line of defense. In this life-or-death crisis, Emperor Li Zong of Song urgently dispatched his Right Grand Chancellor and Commissioner of Military Affairs, Jia Sadao, to Hanyang in order to raise the siege.
贾似道这个人本来就是个地痞无赖，但机缘巧合的是，他的同父异母的姐姐避险入宫，深受李宗的喜爱。 从此走上了政坛。
那么他还是有一定的才能，所以呢，这个名将孟拱去世的时候，在临死之前呢，上这给皇帝写的遗表当中呢，还亲自推荐他接替自己。所以孟拱去世以后，贾似道实际上就成了掌管长江中下游地区的最高军事长官。
It was winter, and Jia Sadao was in Ezhou to lead the war against the Mongols. He knew very well that the survival of the country lay in his hands. Ever since the Mongol invasion, almost all of Song's best troops and horses had been concentrated in Ezhou, making the city impregnable. Now, Jia Sadao had to think of a plan to break the deadlock between the two sides. The most conservative alternative was to stall for time by attempting to negotiate with the Mongols. Kublai Khan now received a secret letter sent from Kaiping, his capital in the north. It was from his wife, Jahan. She urged her husband to return immediately, as Arik Burqa was planning to usurp the throne. Jia Sadao's peace talks offered Kublai Khan a convenient pretext to withdraw from Ezhou. So he led his troops north just as the peace negotiations had begun, and before any specific terms had been agreed. When the Mongol army withdrew, Jia Sedao immediately reported to the Sung court, "The siege of Ezhou has been raised and the state restored to safety. It is an immeasurably happy result." But he kept the peace talks secret. With the threat of national subjugation in abeyance, Emperor Li Zong became more and more self-indulgent, leaving state affairs entirely to Jia Sedao. Jia Sedao claimed the so-called victory at Ezhou as his own. He was honored as Chancellor-in-Chief for his meritorious service and enjoyed even greater power. He became domineering and arrogant, drinking and carousing all day long. By this time, the southern Sung dynasty was already beyond saving. In 1267, after winning the throne and founding the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan launched a renewed war against the Sung. By 1273, the Mongols had taken the strategic towns of Fancheng and Shenyang. At the request of the Sung court, Jia Sedao once again confronted the Mongol army. It was just over 10 years since his previous encounter with Kublai Khan. Facing his old rival, Jia Sedao decided to repeat the same route, offering to enter peace talks. But when his offer was rejected, he was forced to go into battle. At the port of Rump. But the Mongols coordinated their attack on land and water and defeated all three Sung formations. Jia Sedao fled to Yangzhou by boat.
首战失败，高官出逃，贾似道被谢太后罢免，贬往外地，但他的名声太臭了，所贬之地的百姓都拒绝他入京。后来在漳州的木棉庵，贾似道被负责押送的郑虎成处死了。
The death of Jia Sedao sounded the death knell for the southern Sung dynasty. In October 1275, Boyan led the Mongol troops in a three-pronged attack on southern Sung. Even now, its leaders were wavering between war and peace. Those in favor of war, such as Wen Tianxiang and Zhang Shijia, believed that if they battled the Mongols in Linan, modern-day Hangzhou, and cut off their retreat, victory was still possible. But Empress Dowager Xia and Chancellor Chen Yizhong refused to engage in war and instead sent several envoys to propose peace talks with the Mongols. After successive rejections, Empress Dowager Xia pinned her hopes on the scholar official Wen Tianxiang, ordering him to preside over the negotiations. In January 1276, Wen Tianxiang was captured by the Mongols. In February, they entered Linan and sent the Sung ruler Emperor Gong into exile in the north, with all his court. The southern Sung dynasty was effectively at an end.
文天强被扣押以后继续投降，在被耶加北上的途中寻迹脱逃。这个时候，他仍然没有放弃抗战。
但是，仅凭文天祥的一己之力，那么他所组织的这些义军，很快就被打败了。所以这个到了最后，南宋朝廷实际上已经到了名存实亡这个地步，一个文天祥已经救不了南宋朝廷灭亡的命运。
The remaining southern Song officials moved to Mount Ya and appointed 8-year-old Zhao Bing as emperor. Meanwhile, the Mongols recaptured Wen Tianshang and imprisoned him in Lingdingyang. There they ordered him to write a letter calling on Zhang Shijia to surrender. Wen Tianshang was angry and distraught. The Song dynasty was collapsing and he was in prison. Despite this, he refused to submit. He wrote that he would rather die than give in. I took pains reading classics to become an official. 4 bleak years I've spent in the thick of battle. Our land is broken like catkins drifting in the wind. How panic-stricken I was retreating before the Tartars. Being a captive, I lamented my solitary confinement. But who, since time immemorial, has averted his death? Let my heart remain true to shine in the annals. Perhaps Wen Tianshang knew in his heart that there was no hope of saving his country. On the 6th of February 1279, the Mongols launched a 2-pronged attack on the Song at Mount Ya. The Song army suffered a crushing defeat. After realizing all was lost, the Chancellor, Lu Xiufu, gathered the young Emperor Zhao Bing into his arms and leapt from a cliff into the sea. Hordes of soldiers and civilians soon followed him. According to the history of Song, more than 100,000 dead bodies are floating in the water. As the Mongol Empire continued to rise, its cavalry swept invincibly.
在蒙元军的所有的对手当中，南宋抵抗的时间最久，给蒙古军造成的损失最大。就连蒙哥汗也毙命于南宋的炮火之下。南宋虽然不擅长攻势，但在长期的与金、辽、夏的对峙中，积累了丰富的防御战的经验。加上宋人发明了火药，这在实战当中发挥了不小的威力。
南宋的军队也是一支在世界上来看也是一支非常强的部队，只是说他所面对的对手实在是太强大了，所以最后还是免不了被灭亡的命运。
Although the southern Song government was often weak and corrupt, with incompetent emperors and indolent officials, the national policy of advocating benevolence and culture sowed the seeds of loyalty, patriotism, and honor. Once the country faced a critical threat, many people were willing to give their lives for it. Although their sacrifice could not turn back the tide, it made the invaders pay a heavy price. As the Qing Dynasty scholar Zhao Yi put it, in troubled times, many people were ready to lay down their lives for the nation. In the Shaoxing era, they strove to protect Song. The De-You era ended on the battlefield. Although their sacrifice did not save the dynasty, it did demonstrate their dedication to the court.